Welcome into OutKick the Show, Monday edition. I hope all of you are having fantastic starts to your week. We are taping in the morning, so I'm not going to talk much about Iran other than to say it was an awesome Easter surprise, awesome Easter event to have the second of the F-15 individuals rescued in Iran. Thanks to everyone, the Special Ops Forces, the President, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, everybody who was involved in that rescue. I've read all about it. It is an extraordinary story. The president is going to speak on Iran later this afternoon. We will be carrying it live on the Clay and Buck Show on radio. I am taping early this morning because I've got a bunch of other interviews going on and everything else. So I'm not going to react much to Iran other than to contextualize here. This is kind of wild to think about. As I am taping on Monday morning, we have lost 13 lives in the Iran attacks. I wish we had had a zero casualty rate, but the reality is we have lost 13 lives. I want you to think about this in the context. That is over a month of constant combat, attacks, everything else. More people have died and been murdered in Chicago since the war with Iran started than American soldiers who have died in Iran. That's kind of crazy to think about. Let me repeat that. This operation has been so successful from a casualty perspective that we have seen more people murdered in Chicago. That's just people going about their daily lives in Chicago. More people have been murdered in Chicago since this war, this altercation, this attack, whatever, this mission, whatever word you want to apply here. More people have died in Chicago than American combat soldiers who have died in this attack, in this war, in this engagement with Iran. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about. So incredible levels of success in detail. We'll talk about this certainly live on Clay and Buck as the president talks. But I want to talk about a bunch of different stories that are out there that came primarily from the world of sports over the weekend and over the past several days. First of all, congratulations to UCLA. They dominated against UConn's women to win by 29 points on Easter Sunday. And by the way, happy Easter to all of you. I hope you and your friends and family had a phenomenal weekend and that you got to spend some good time together and that all of you had a fantastic weekend. I know it was a fantastic weekend if you're a UCLA women's basketball fan. They win big. They blow out the UConn women in the process and win a national title. So congratulations to UCLA. The Big Ten's march of dominance continues. We had Indiana win the football championship. Michigan plays tonight. We'll get into that a little bit against UConn. But I did want to comment on the Geno Auriemma versus Dawn Staley blow up, the kerfuffle that they had surrounding the near end of the game. Geno has apologized. Dawn Staley says she's upset. She said she would beat his ass. You could watch that video if you haven't seen it already. I don't like either of these guys. So this is the very definition. You know that meme where the kids like taking a picture as two different people are fighting, beating each other up? That's kind of how I felt about this entire process. I have not liked Geno ever since he got into his feuds with Pat Summitt. I am a University of Tennessee fan, and so I was always Team Pat in the Pat Summitt versus Geno Auriemma battle that they had for years and years near the end of Pat Summitt's career. UConn and Tennessee were the two best women's basketball programs, and Geno and Pat went back and forth. So I have not really liked Geno Auriemma. I don't know him personally, by the way. This is all reacting to public persona. I might love Geno. I might love Dawn Staley if I spent time with him. But based on public persona and some interaction with Dawn Staley, I don't like either of these people. So I do think Geno was out of line in the way that he behaved near the end of that game. I also think Dawn Staley's reaction where she was saying she was going to beat his ass was utterly ridiculous too. So I don't think either one of them came off looking very good in that situation. But again, I'm not a fan of either. So if you asked me to script my perfect ending to women's basketball this season, it probably would have been everybody decides they hate Geno, and then Dawn Staley's team gets blown out. So this was a perfect ending. Thank you, ladies, for making it a reality. You say, okay, Clay, what's your issue with Dawn Staley? Dawn Staley is a committed left-wing crazy person. You might remember a couple of years ago, she said that she would welcome men who identify as women, that she considers them to be women, on her team. But she knows this is BS because she practices the South Carolina women do against random intramural dudes that attend South Carolina. And that makes the women better. And actually, Pat Summitt started this. Your average frat league champion on a college campus would crush the South Carolina women's team, the UCLA women's team, the UConn women's team. You pick it. Again, a good men's frat league champ in intramurals would beat by 20 points or more the national champion women. I'm not talking about guys who are out there that are playing, obviously, college basketball. I'm talking about frat league all-stars and intramurals. You put a fraternity team, maybe all of them, but certainly the fraternity league champ, they would beat the women head-to-head in a basketball game. Dawn Staley knows this. So when she's willing to stay committed to politics like this and say, oh, if a man identifies as a woman, then to me she's a woman, it destroys all of women's sports. So I am happy that Dawn Staley's team got obliterated. Congratulations, UCLA. I am happy that everybody decided they didn't like Geno Auriemma because he's an ass. So that's kind of the perfect ending. It's the best season ever. Okay, within that construct, congratulations to the International Olympic Committee. They, following the lead of President Trump, have announced that men who decide that they want to compete as women are not able to compete in women's sports. And all you have to do, if you want to qualify as a woman, is you just have to have your cheek swabbed. Cheek swab, for all of us out there that got tested 1 billion times to be able to do anything for COVID that we were told we had to do. You get a cheek swab. It determines what your chromosomes are. If you are not a woman, then you have to compete as a man. Okay? So, again, nobody is being banned. Nobody is being eliminated. We're just going to stop men from being able to win gold medals in women's boxing by beating the crap out of women. And we're going to stop men from being able to win women's gold medals, as has happened now multiple times in the Olympics, for freaking powerlifting, for sprinting. It's happened in a lot of different sports that biological men, that is, people who do not qualify as women, have won women's Olympic championships. Megan Rapinoe and I think it's her wife, girlfriend, whatever it is, Sue Bird, both of whom were elite female athletes. Megan Rapinoe is upset. She says the International Olympic Committee got it wrong. Listen.
This will require a once-in-a-lifetime screening of all women's athletes for the SRY gene. And if an athlete tests positive for this gene, they will have to compete in the male category. We already know that biology, as much as we want it to be just nice and clean and tight and perfectly in one category or another, it's not. We know that. So now what we're doing is subjecting everybody, all women and all people who are identifying as women, to this really invasive testing that only to me just says like, oh, so we're just trying to whittle it down to a certain type of woman. Is that what we're doing? Like, that's really the whole game here. Like, there's been, they sort of like lost the battle on gay marriage and lost the battle on all these things. So it's just like, we're going to have this whole campaign for all these years to just hate trans people, which is such a small percentage of the population. It's actually like on a single hand when we're talking about sports. And just like thread the absolute tightest needle thread that you possibly could. This committee is framing it as based in science, which it's not. And this will ultimately just prevent people from competing within the women's category that they feel like have an unfair advantage. It's just really hateful.
Okay. Megan Rapinoe, to me, is like Dawn Staley here. They're connected in that they both are willing to stay so committed to their political beliefs that they will eliminate common sense and basic competitive reality. Megan Rapinoe's World Cup winning champion team lost 5-2, I believe it was, to an under 15-year-old boys team in Dallas, Texas. These were not the greatest soccer players who were 15 years old in the United States. These were boys 15 years old in Dallas, Texas. They smoked the U.S. Women's World Cup winning championship team. Biology is real. If men who identify as women decided to play women's soccer, there would be no women's soccer team. Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, the same thing is true of basketball. Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird are both now retired. So having already made their millions of dollars in competitive athletics, they can now argue, well, it is wrong to ban men from women's sports. I would like to see Megan Rapinoe pushed back here and have the biological reality of what occurs here spoken to her. I never have seen her do an interview with anybody who has pushed back in any way on this at all. She said this policy was hateful. She said there's basically no basis in science for it at all. She's wrong. And I think, frankly, this is shameful. And I think almost everybody out there who is a sports fan, certainly any man who has played sports, recognizes the difference between men and women. Heck, just watch any women's athletic event. And imagine if you had a biological male playing in it. It's above the rim basketball. It's totally different speed in tennis. It is a completely different power in soccer, such that 15-year-old boys, these are kids that have just barely begun puberty, really, are infinitely better than the best women in the world just from Dallas, Texas. So I think this is so consequential and significant, and shame on Megan Rapinoe for turning her back on women's athletes and staying committed to her politics over basic common sense. And shame on Dawn Staley, too. And I'll probably talk some about this on the FS1 show, which will be on FS1 on Wednesday. Okay, tonight's game, UConn, Michigan. I think Michigan's going to win, and I think Michigan's going to win comfortably. That doesn't take away from the fact that I believe Dan Hurley right now is the best coach in all of college basketball. If you look at what Dan Hurley has done, at the dominance that he has displayed, going for his third title in 4 years in an NIL era where you basically have to remake the team on the fly every single year. It should be impossible for there to be a dynasty because, by and large, the best players don't stay long enough to create a dynasty because you have to remake your entire team every single year. Dan Hurley is the best coach in college basketball. But this is my prediction. I think that Michigan is playing at an entirely different level than everybody else. They are, I believe, the best team in college basketball. Back at the start of the season, they were beating people by 30 or 40 points. They went, I believe, 19-1 in the Big Ten, which, based on the NCAA tournament results, looks like the best conference in America. They only lost, I believe, 3 games all year long. I believe I'm right. Wisconsin, Purdue, and Duke. I think those were the 3 games that Michigan lost all year. Purdue was in the Big Ten championship game for the tournament title. And Wisconsin, probably the biggest upset of the year. Wisconsin went on the road and won at Michigan, which is kind of out of nowhere. And then we had that great game in Washington, D.C. between Duke and Michigan. Kind of, I wish we were getting a Duke and Michigan rematch in the national title game. But I love what Dan Hurley has done. I love how crazy he is on the sidelines, how hard he coaches his guys. But ultimately, I just think Michigan's got too many horses. What I saw them do to Tennessee was one thing, because Tennessee had been somewhat of an erratic team all year. What Michigan did, but it was still a beatdown. What Michigan did, however, to Arizona was utter evisceration. and Arizona was one of the 2 or 3 best teams all year. Michigan is the best team in college basketball, and I expect Michigan to win this game by double digits against UConn tonight. I will be watching, as will many of you. In fact, today is my birthday. So I am having steak and cake, and then I am watching college basketball. So I've got family and friends coming over. That's my plan for my my birthday today. 47, by the way, 47. 1979 kids represent. The best era, I would argue, is kids like me, now fully grown up, but the people who were kids at the very end of Gen X, beginning of millennials, because we were fortunate enough to grow up without the internet, but we were young enough when the internet started that we understand how the internet works, and it was not some foreign thing to us. Does that make sense? I think there's a bridge era for, early Gen X kids were very different than late. Like, I was the last year, I think, officially of Gen X. I think 1980 is officially the start of the millennial generation, if I'm not mistaken. But I think there are a bunch of us out there that know what it was like to grow up when you're sitting around watching WGN and WTBS, Braves and Cubs every night. You come home from school because both your parents work, as I did, and you sit down and you watch. Back in the day, I used to watch the TBS old school shows. If you guys remember, they had all the reruns of the 1960s and the Brady Bunch and shows such as that on TBS back in the day. You get home, flip on the television, but the internet didn't exist, so. You really kind of were on your own a lot. And, for us, high-end technology was call waiting. If your parents got call waiting and you could get one call and flip over and get another call, you thought that was like high-end technology back in the day. I had a sister who was on the phone a lot. If you had other teenagers in your household, you're always like, I got to get a call because I don't know where to go. What are we going to do tonight? And you'd show up, and you didn't have cell phones. So a lot of your life was just trying to figure out where everybody was. So you're driving around, calling houses, leaving voicemail messages. Anyway, I feel like the bridge generation still may end up saving the country before all is said and done, because we're not as crazy as the perpetual internet generation, but we still have touch tones with people who were pre-internet, yet we have the ability to use the internet comfortably. It's dangerous. We have like the toughness of Gen X, but the sophistication technologically of the millennials, which makes us a superhuman race. Those of us who were born from like 1975 or 1976 to like 1982, that like tiny little cohort there. Anyway, I think we're like the Matrix Keanu Reeves characters that are more sophisticated and dangerous than most of those around us otherwise. Speaking of which, understanding how the internet works, I saw this from Nate Silver, who, if we can pull this graphic up, I don't know if we can zoom in on it or not. These are the most engaged Twitter accounts of 2026, according to Nate Silver. I have no idea how this was determined. In other words, these metrics that he has used, I don't know how accurate they are. I am one of the most engaged Twitter accounts. He's got me in the top right, where the circle is being shown there. But then I also pulled, and I believe, and look, I don't claim to be an expert on this. I pay for Twitter Premium. I think it's like $10 a month or something. And by the way, for just posting on Twitter now, I get a decent amount of money, and I do post everything from my Twitter account. It's all me, whether you like me or not. So the Twitter Premium that I signed up for has been very financially rewarding. I pay like $10 a month or something, and I get back 5,000 or 6,000 at least a month from my Twitter account. Do we have the other one where I shared like the Twitter engagement numbers? This is what is actually out there. So far through 2026, I have, according to the account analytics that I posted underneath this, 431.2 million impressions, 14 million engagements, 362,000 replies, 7.2 million likes, 747,000 profile visits, and nearly 100,000 verified followers. Again, I don't know any of what that data represents relative to other people, but I do want to say thank you for everybody that engages with my Twitter account. I joined Twitter in 2009. It has been incredibly instrumental in the success that I've had in my career. And I think since Elon has bought Twitter, my reach has only increased, and the number of you interacting with my tweets on a day-to-day basis has only increased based on the data there. Okay, a couple of other things. We talk a lot about what the impact is of athletics on colleges and universities. And right now there's a ton of talk surrounding NIL and how that impact is going and everything else. I saw this data from Vanderbilt University that they posted. Actually, it's from the campus newspaper, I think the Vanderbilt Hustler, on campus. And it shares, and I can't see the exact numbers here, but I believe that Vanderbilt had a 2.8% acceptance rate in the class of 2030 for regular decision. And over 40,000 applicants have applied. And Vanderbilt has become, in the process, one of the most selective universities in the entire country. And I'll share a stat with you that I was told that Vanderbilt now is getting a higher yield than some Ivy League universities. What do I mean by that? What's the yield? When you get to 2.8% acceptance rate or 3% or 4%, it's so low that what the universities start paying more attention to is actually what is the yield of the admitted students that they bring in, how many of them actually come to Vanderbilt. Because kids apply to a lot of schools now, and what they look at is the yield. How many kids actually come to the university as opposed to what the admit rate is. And the yield now for Vanderbilt University is better than some Ivy League schools. So if kids get admitted to an Ivy League school or Vanderbilt, the kids getting admitted to Vanderbilt are more likely to say, yes, we're coming to you. You are our top choice. That's extraordinary. What's going on here? I think two things. One, I believe the city of Nashville is on fire, and the SEC campuses in general are way more sought after now than they ever have been before. It's really hard to get into Georgia. It's really hard to get into Florida. It's really hard to get into the University of Texas. Those schools are incredibly elite. But Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, South Carolina, increasingly southern schools are becoming very, very difficult to get into. And people from LA and Chicago and New York City are now sending their kids to southern schools, which 20 years ago didn't happen. Why is that? I think the culture of the South is surging. There is a recognition that those of us who live in the South have a better quality of life than people who live in many other parts of the country. This is my opinion. And certainly we have a much lower tax rate. In many ways, the communities are safer. Schools are better. The amount of money pouring in here is skyrocketing compared to other parts of the country. And Vanderbilt is the best beneficiary of that because it is the best school in the SEC. So for a long time, kids in the South aspired to go to Vanderbilt. If you're from Texas or you're from Florida and you want to go to the best school in the SEC, a lot of kids have long aspired to go to Vanderbilt. Now kids all over the country are aspiring to go to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt is competing with the Columbias and the Harvards and the Stanfords of the world on a level that they did not compete with in the past. And part of that cultural significance is the way that kids responded to October 7th on SEC campuses. Instead of taking over campuses and protesting in favor of Hamas, most kids on SEC campuses protested in favor of Israel's right to defend itself. And this happened on Vanderbilt's campus in particular. They tried to take over the campus quad, the main building in the center of Vanderbilt's campus, and the chancellor, Daniel Diermeyer, said, arrest them all immediately. We're not going to stand for this. You have the right to protest, and he made that quite clear, but you have to do so within the bounds of acceptable behavior on campus. You don't have the right, in other words, to take over campus buildings. And not only did they arrest the protesters at Vanderbilt, they kicked out the protesters who were students that violated the law. And since then, the number of applicants sending has surged, okay? So that is point one for Vanderbilt. It is the overall rising tide of SEC athletics. I think SEC culture. It also is directly connected to the history of success. I think Nick Saban, the fun that exists on campuses for big college football games, I think it's gone viral everywhere. I think what Nick Saban did for Alabama, for instance, is one of the great untold stories out there. Alabama's overall enrollment doubled during Nick Saban's tenure, and now half of the kids that go to Alabama, for instance, are from outside the state of Alabama, all paying out-of-state tuition, which is just flooding the amount of dollars into that community and into that university, which is overall rising tide there as a result. Okay. The other part, I was just kind of touching on this, is athletics. I think this is the impact of a Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt University. Vanderbilt beat Alabama a couple of years ago. Football team went 10-2 in the regular season this past year, won a lot of big games, was on the front pages, old school front pages of so many different news stories. And this is athletic program as the front porch of the university. So I just think Vanderbilt University is on fire. Now, I don't think I've talked about this, but we have been very successful, thankfully, here in the Travis household. And my wife and I have been thinking about ways to try and give back. And one of the things that we decided to do was we met at Vanderbilt University back in 2001 at the law school. And I was recruiting pretty girls for the co-ed softball team. It has now been 25 years? 25 years since I first stepped foot at Vanderbilt University Law School, and things have gone quite well since then. I got married to one of my classmates and my wife, Laura. We have 3 kids, happy, healthy, 18, 15, 11-year-old boys, and we've had a lot of success financially, thankfully. And so we announced, I don't know, about a couple of weeks ago, I don't think I mentioned it on this show, but it is a sign of how proud I am at Vanderbilt and many of the choices that they've made. We announced a $10 million gift to the Vanderbilt University Law School. So that is a sign of how committed we are to free speech principles. There's a lot of different things that $10 million donation is going to do for parents that are trying to get a law degree, provide some child care support. There's a commitment to the First Amendment, a robust and uninhibited First Amendment that the University Law School has made. We've endowed a couple of different professorships. A lot of different awesome things that are taking place there. If you're from a military background, we're going to help provide support for some of our veterans to be able to go back to law school and get law degrees. All these different things, super great. Hopefully, we're going to be able to do even more for a variety of different causes that make sense to us in the years ahead. But we've had a lot of success. So I believe Vanderbilt University Law School was a huge part in the success that I've had. My wife's an alum. I'm an alum. And now we are giving back to that school to the tune of $10 million. Not insubstantial, but a lot of people have a lot more. We're fortunate to have that and be able to donate it. Okay. LeBron. We'll close up shop here on the program with LeBron deciding that he was going to weigh in on Memphis and how he doesn't want to be there. And this thing went mega viral, lots of criticism. LeBron playing golf and having conversations about not wanting to be in Memphis. Watch.
Staying at the fucking Hyatt at 41 years old. You think I want to do that shit? Being in Memphis on a fucking random-ass Thursday? I'm not like the first guy I even talk about in the NBA. Like, we all like, you guys have to move. Just go over to Nashville. You got the You got Vanderbilt over there. You got the fucking NASCAR. You got a stadium. Don't they got a hockey team too?
Yeah, Predators.
Predators. Like they got everything.
Doesn't look like LeBron's going to be on the Grizzlies anytime soon, so Grizzly fans out there.
Yeah, they know. Their only chance was in 2003 if they'd have won the lottery to give me that. And I might have pulled a Eli Manning and not showed up.
Now, this has gotten a lot of attention because there is a huge battle between Nashville and Memphis. When I was a kid, and a lot of you have talked about this before, depending on what state you grew up in, Houston and Dallas, for instance, have a big rivalry, kind of going back and forth. San Francisco and LA. If there are two decent-sized cities inside of the same state, it's not uncommon for them to kind of go head-to-head and be at loggerheads sometimes. I'm sure Tampa and Jacksonville and Orlando and Miami have a little bit of this. Again, when you have two decent-sized cities inside of a state. When I was a kid, Nashville and Memphis, it used to be a debate, which is the better city. I haven't heard that debate in 20 years. So Nashville has clearly gone to a different level where when people argue about cities in the South, they say Nashville or Austin, Nashville or Charlotte, maybe a little bit of Nashville or Atlanta. Nashville's just gone to a different level of desirability, and there isn't any real Nashville versus Memphis debate. I don't know that LeBron knew that, but when he stepped in here and said that the Grizzlies should be moved from Memphis to Nashville, he really kind of stepped onto a fault line that he probably wasn't aware of. And the reality is this, and I used to talk about this when I did local sports talk radio in Nashville. There is no world in which Memphis ever loses its franchise in the NBA to Nashville. It's just not going to happen. Politically, I don't think it's possible. Nashville is going to get, I believe, a Major League Baseball franchise. And then my hometown of Nashville will have the NFL, the MLS, the Major League Baseball, and the NHL. We'll have 4 of the so-called 5 major franchises out there. Nashville, I believe, here's an early prediction. I don't know if very many people have said this. Nashville's going to get the 2030 Super Bowl, which is going to be pretty extraordinary for the city to be able to have and host a Super Bowl. That will be a big cultural impact moment for the city of Nashville. But I think politically, Memphis has to have the NBA. And if they lose the NBA one day, and remember they took the Vancouver franchise, right? Memphis got Vancouver to move to Memphis. So it's not as if that was an original Memphis franchise. I think it would be incredibly difficult politically for Memphis to lose a franchise to Nashville. I just think the people of Memphis would lose their minds. And it's because of that rivalry between Nashville and Memphis. And the Grizzlies are in a tough spot because they're kind of caught in the middle here. Back in the day, I floated the idea of letting the Preds play some games in Memphis and letting the Grizz play some games in Nashville. I don't think the Preds would want to go to Memphis necessarily. I think the Grizz would love to be able to play some games in Nashville. And I think that Nashville, as it is growing so rapidly, would have the ability to support eventually all 5 pro sports franchises. I really do. And a big part of that is not only the population of Nashville. MLB, for instance, the number of people that would come to Nashville and go to sporting events on vacation. For those of you who haven't been to Broadway lately, go to downtown Nashville, Broadway. It's like the Vegas Strip now. It doesn't matter what time it is. All right, I'm talking to you right now. We're taping at 10:30 in the morning on Monday. At 10:30 in the morning, I guarantee you right now, the Strip is crazy. There are people there on vacation. There are drunk people listening to music. It's 10:30 a.m. The number of people that come to Nashville for crazy holiday weekends and excursions, I think Major League Baseball would sell 10,000 tickets a weekend to them, in addition to the people that would support it well from here. not to mention all the fans that would travel in from other cities. Okay. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for supporting OutKick and me for yet another trip around the sun. I will be on Clay and Buck as we react live to the president, who's going to be speaking, I believe, at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then we will have the OutKick show tomorrow. Don't be like Megan Rapinoe. Don't be a hypocrite. Be a strong, committed, brave, outspoken, and honest steward for your beliefs. I am Clay Travis. Thanks for the birthday wishes. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. This has been OutKick, the show.